I'm going to walk you through this chapter, and it's talking about how research and sources and evidence can really improve your writing. Professors will be very impressed if you can bring research in that is appropriate and that is carefully documented to show that you're not making it up, but you actually looked for good sources. So here in the first section, it's going to talk about a paragraph written by David that doesn't have much evidence. He's making claims or statements, but he can't really prove it because he doesn't have details or examples. So in the next section, he has included some. He's mentioned the names of some groups. He's given some examples. And very important here, in quotation marks, it says Khan. Khan is not the title. Khan is the author. And using MLA, that's all you need to show is the author's last name. That's it. Because at the end of the paper, short paper, here he will have the list of works cited. K for Khan, K comes before M. It's easy to find the full citation right here in the end of the paper. The next one, it says QTD in Macmillan. QTD means quoted in Macmillan. Now he is taking the research that another author did. A guy named Macmillan wrote an article, and in Macmillan's article he quoted another source. So this is the correct way to show that it was quoted in another writer. He's one step away from the actual source, but still this is useful and helpful to support his main claim. If possible, start with some library research, but you might need help in finding a good part of the library, especially a database in the library that is really appropriate for what you're doing. Next, look on the internet, and there are special search engines that are more reliable, and sometimes just putting the word in research next to the title you're looking for will give you something more serious. So he's looking for rap music lyrics. If he just put in rap music lyrics into Google or Yahoo, he might get some more serious article that actually gives data that he can use in his paper. Finding the specific words called keywords is a very tricky process, and a lot of times you'll be looking for something and you won't realize that it's organized under a different keyword that has almost the same meaning. So it's tricky to do this, and you often have to end up trying different keywords that will lead you to better sources. If you're in a browser, it's always nice to use bookmarks because they're so easy to use. You start a new folder and you save that website. It's probably the easiest way to use to search on the internet, and everybody needs to learn how to do it well. Just for daily life, using bookmarks is super helpful. On the internet, the address has a special meaning, special parts, and I'm most interested in the domain name over here. This is a .com. Now some people say .com is not reliable because maybe it's a business selling things, but actually this one is the New York Times. The New York Times is really considered probably the top newspaper in the United States. They have the most money and the most reporters to get the best research and information. So even though this is .com, I think it's still very useful, and our library databases do include the New York Times many times because it's such a good newspaper. It's often quoted by other sources. The government is a very good source of basic information, but many times the most useful way to start out is some kind of a magazine or newspaper directly, because these directories, these lists of sources and articles, these are the ones that are easiest to read in the beginning. They are not academic. They're not specialized. They're designed for anybody to read at a basic reading level. Now, how will you evaluate your source? In other words, how will you decide that it is a good source? For example, current information. How old is it? I don't really want sources that are more than 10 years old because things change fast. How reliable is it? Is it respected? This is tricky to judge, and this is why you're safer on the library databases than you are on the internet. The internet contains many, many unreliable sources, which are sometimes called fake news. But the library databases are much more reliable in general. Is the author an expert on the subject? Now, this is harder to determine, but still very useful. How do you know that this guy really knows what he's talking about? A lot of times you'll start your paper with kind of very hard facts, numbers, statistics. Then as you'll go on, you'll start to make more statements that are harder to support, but are still very useful, especially if an expert. So I'm looking for professors. I'm looking for people that are working in research organizations on various topics, people who are leading important organizations on different topics. Those are the people that are experts. Are they biased or are they balanced? Balance means they're not trying to prove something because of politics or their company. So please think about these things. Because of Google, it's easy, very easy to find opposite ideas, evidence for opposite ideas, and I'm interested in the ones that are more reliable and easier to trust for these reasons here. So the practice assignment here is to look at these three websites here. We have here 6 websites, and they're all about the topic of antidepressants. So pretend that you're writing an essay, and the topic is the effectiveness of antidepressants. Antidepressants are drugs that people take to make themselves less depressed. Depression is a sadness that is very strong feeling, and medicine seems to help some of these people. But these medications are maybe used too much, and we want to find out, do they really work? So what they want you to do is decide which of these websites seems to be useful for investigating further. Which one seems to be the most appropriate? How do you know that each site could be useful? You can look at the title, you look at the internet address, and you can look at the first section here, the sentence, one of the sentences from the beginning of the article. So think about those things. If the title seems good, and if it looks like a reliable website, that's very important. This one is Science Daily. It's really trying to focus on the real science behind these drugs for depression. There's other ones here. New York Times I like, but this one, Masasi.net, I'm not sure about that one. So, next, go to Google, type prison reform, write down how many hits you get, pretend that you're searching on prison reform and answer these questions. Look at these domains. These are some of the best domains. EDUs, colleges, ORG are organizations that are not selling things, but are trying to give information to the public. GOV is for government. And then compare two of these websites. Which one seems more reliable and why? More reliable means we can trust it. It's really telling the truth. Now, you might collect many interesting references, but how will you go back and locate that and then get the full MLA citation? A lot of people start out their research and they don't realize how tough it can be at the end if they haven't been careful to write down complete information about the author, the title of the book or magazine or journal. If you haven't tried to save this information, it'll be very hard at the end to put your paper together and do the correct citation. Paraphrase, summary, and quotation. I'll be talking about this more here. Paraphrase is just changing the language, changing the vocabulary and the grammar, but keep exactly the same information. So when you paraphrase, you still have to say where you got it, but it's not a quote. So it really shows the audience that you understand it, and it shows me that you can express it in your words in a way that fits into the paragraph that you're writing. So paraphrases are really better than quotes in most cases. Summaries are shorter, only main ideas. So you're skipping a lot of details. A lot of research papers start with summaries to give general background information. Then they move on to paraphrases, but when they really want to make a strong point and they really believe that the language itself is special, they'll put in a quote. So a quote is very special when the writer's exact words cannot be paraphrased because they're so powerful and so unique. It's time for a quote, and usually a short quote is better, not a long quote. Plagiarism is stealing one thing from the article. Maybe you're stealing the ideas and the information, or maybe you're stealing the language and making it look like you wrote it. That's plagiarism, so please be careful not to do it. I'll be talking more about this later. Paraphrasing and summarizing, how to do it. We've practiced summarizing already on the Gen X article. Paraphrasing, you really need to rebuild the sentence in a way. It's not really enough just to change a few vocabulary words and put in some words with the same meaning. It really needs to be your own words. If you can't explain it in your own words, then you probably don't really understand it, and you shouldn't be using it in your paper. If this keeps happening, think about an easier topic. Your topic is too difficult. All of the research will be written at a high level that you cannot explain with your language. So there's some nice practice here. Here's the original, and here is the paraphrase, and now the shorter summary at the end. So I want you to practice this one here. It's about the National Honor Society. You are going to do one paraphrase and one summary here, and the summary will be the short one. And then another practice here, so I'll go back and just briefly explain this one. It's about the National Honor Society, and this is a group of outstanding students who are want to be recognized for being excellent students, but they found out, this organization found out, that most of its members, 64%, are girls. So their paragraph is talking about that and the difference between girls and boys in their school performance. So explain it now in a paraphrase using your language, and then take out just the main ideas into the summary section here. This word here, affirmative action, is talking about making special policies to give extra help to groups of people who are having trouble in their performance. So here it's the boys. Maybe the boys need extra help. Otherwise, they won't be equal with the girls in their academic work. We're going to skip this one. It's a little bit strange and difficult to understand. Now we're going to get into plagiarism, which means how, when they took out the information and put it in their report, did they steal it or did they give proper credit? And this is a careful skill to show correctly the original source. So the only way to avoid plagiarism is to say where you got the information, and in this case the writer's name is Bryson, so they have to somehow show that name, and they have to either quote the exact words or paraphrase it without making it look like they're stealing the words. So when you paraphrase, you show that you're not taking the author's exact language and using it as your own. In a paraphrase, you don't use quotation marks, but you explain it in your language, your grammar, your vocabulary. So look in here, look at this little summary, and try to decide, is it plagiarism? And then why? Explain your answer. And one of the things that we're looking for here is the name of the author. We're looking for the way the language has been changed. How do we cite sources with MLA? Well, many students write a long paragraph, and at the end of the paragraph they put the name of the author. But the problem with that sometimes is that I don't know if Bovey, if his information covers the whole paragraph or just the last sentence. So this style is sometimes a little bit easier. Bovey says, and just a short quote, and then the page number where that quote came from. This is what a works cited page. This comes at the end of the research paper on a separate page, and it is organized alphabetically, so it's B-I, B-O, B-R in this listing here. It's very important to realize that when you identify an article or a book, usually it's going to be the writer, the author, is going to be the first name, and so in the paper, when I give the citation, I'll just say Brody, There's only one Brody on this list, so it's easy to find. But these days, there's many websites that have no authors. And those are the websites we really have to be careful with, because if they don't have an author, they may not be reliable. So if I really trust this website and I feel like they are really have good information, I might include them. But since I cannot put an author's name, I have to use the title of the website. And I put it here, BI, bipolar. I put it in quotation marks. And in the paper, I also have to use this as the in-text citation. And that gets tricky sometimes because Bovey, one name, Brody, one name that's very easy for citing. Oh, here there's two names. There's Thill and Bovey. So in the paragraph, I'll put bracket, parentheses, Bovey and Thill, bracket, parentheses. Up here, though, I have to put the complete title of the web page in the sentence, in the paragraph, to say where I got this. Here's an explanation that shows how we do this with the MLA. MLA is very special and particular, and some of you might have learned a different system called the APA. In the APA, what makes it special is that after the author's name, you always put the year. And even in the in-text paragraphs, you do it that way. But MLA is very different. It starts with the author's name, then the title of the article, title of the publication, etc., etc. And then, in this case, because it's a website, we're going to do the original date and the date that I checked it, I looked at it. The internet is always changing. So both dates are useful, when it was originally written and when I looked at it. I'll be helping you later to give full citations for special documents and reports. Right now, you should just try to save as much as you can, because if you lose this information later on, it will be very hard at the end to put this together in your works cited page. Just want to mention that everything can be cited or documented. Movies, YouTube videos, sound recordings, TV shows, even in phone call, email, all of those things can be documented. If you call a professor and he tells you something very useful for your paper, you have to document that, and there's a special way to do it. So this last exercise is a difficult one here, but they want you to pretend that you have written a paper and you have cited several sources, and now you're going to create the last page. This is the hardest part of the research paper, the works cited page, and you're going to take this information and create a list of full citations. So naturally, the first thing you're going to look at is called the author's last name, if it's there. If you don't find any author's last name, then you're going to have to go for the title of the web page. And here's an example: Honesty, Ethics in Professions. So There is no author here, but we have the title of the web page from the website called Gallup. So I'd like you to try this. Try your best. I don't care if you make little mistakes in the volume number or the page number, but I especially want to see that the first name is correct. And that's going to be the title of the web page or the author's last name, because that's going to tell you how the whole list is organized. And then you can go back onto these explanations and find a similar example. Is it a newspaper article? Then it should be organized just like this. And finally, one thing I forgot to mention is that in MLA, they always put one part of the citation in italics. Italics means the letters are leaning. They're not straight up and down. They're leaning a little bit to the right. Usually, the italicized section is the title of the publication. But there are some cases where it is not. It might be the title of the website. Here's the title of the website, salon.com. And in a few cases, it is the title of a database or a government organization, which we see over here. So please try your best to take these citation information 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Take the information out of here and organize them in order A, B, C, D according to author's last name or title. Next we have a very nice sample research paper that really explains what a good MLA paper has. Summer is the student's last name, and 1, it means the first page. This is required in MLA. All of this is required over here. Student name, professor name, course number, date. Title. In MLA, you're only allowed to have one title. You're not allowed to have paragraph headings, subheadings. So be careful on that. This means you have to have very good topic sentences. So this topic sentence is giving me the information that I might get from a title. Of course, we're starting out with a little hook to show how this is interesting, and they say, well, it's common to see people holding a cell phone in many situations. So cell phones they're everywhere. We're using them all the time. That's all they're trying to say. It's just kind of an interesting observation that helps us start thinking about cell phones. That's all. It's not talking about the safety. That comes later in the paper. So please don't put main ideas into this introduction. This is a very gentle, gradual, we're slowly coming up to the main topic. And the big, big main idea is right down here, the thesis. Cell phones have some benefits. Benefit's a wonderful word to put in a thesis because I know exactly what this category is about, but I don't know what they are. I don't need to. That comes later. But they may be dangerous for human health. Now, what's great about this thesis is that it's not giving us the details, but it is suggesting that first I'm going to talk about some benefits, and then I'm going to talk about some dangers. In other words, the thesis is giving us the main idea and the organization of the paper. So, excellent topic sentence, also very general language. Effects is very general language. He's not telling me, he's not identifying the effects, he's just saying there are effects. Now he's explaining it, and we have our first quote and citation. I'd like you to see that this quote is not a full sentence. Please make your quotes as short as possible. If you quote a long sentence, it makes the reader do a lot of work to understand why you're taking out this information. So please be careful not to use too many quotes. And in this example here, this is also very useful. In psychology, Sandra K. Ciccarelli says that, notice here that the author's name is not at the end where it says 222, because the author is already identified. And all I have to do is give 222 in brackets, and that's enough. I know that this Ciccarelli will be at the end of the paper, where I'll get all the details about the book, the publication, the year, etc. So it's a nice example of really the kind of paper that I'm hoping you can write. This person has done a fair amount of research, and they really understand the topic. The only little problem I have with this is there are some fairly long quotes, and I would really like you to try to shorten your quotes, and I would say like maximum 1 quote per paragraph. Putting these long quotes in here is a very lazy way to write a paper. This means you're just copy, paste. Maybe you don't even really understand this quote, but if you can paraphrase it and summarize it, that really shows me that you understand it and you are using it to support your main claim. Your claim is usually the topic sentence. That's the general point you're trying to prove in this section. So I really don't like these long quotes at all. I prefer to start out with a topic sentence, then have an explanation in your words, including a citation, in-text citation. And then if you really need to quote, be careful, make it shorter. Look for the special language that you think you cannot explain yourself. So here's our works cited page. We have 5 sources in this. Some of them were cited more than once in the article. That's fine. Just want to point out a couple little things here. ABC order by alphabetical. For our authors' names, 1 is a title of a report with no author, and that's this one with the quotation marks. No author here, so we have to go by the letter M, but with a quotation marks. And we also see italics in titles of publications, as I mentioned before. And we see that this web page does not have an internet address. It's not really necessary, but it does have the original date of the web page and the date that this student reached it or used it or accessed it. Both of them are important in the MLA citation. So this is the kind of works cited page that you need to produce back here on this section by using the information, as much as information from here about this author's work.